Okay, let's see. All right, we are live. We are live. So make sure we're good to go on this end. Yep, we are live. So this is starting our discussion on what would we really do if we were in this mental health crisis. This critically acclaimed film has been all over all over Netflix, and everyone's been talking about it all over social media. And so tonight, we as therapists, as clinicians, want to come together at the stage. Okay. You guys can hear me okay? In Jesus' name, we're going to be okay. Okay, it cut me out. But tonight we just want to really talk about, as clinicians, what would we do to help Janaya? If she were our client, what would we do to help her overcome these struggles? What would we do to help her to overcome her trauma, to not be in the state that she's in, to not go to jail? And so we have two different scenarios. But first, I want us to just start with introducing ourselves. We'll start with Dr. Keisha. If you could just introduce yourself, your name, your credentials, your practice, the name of your practice, and then also any themes that you're seeing in counseling today, like any themes that you've seen with your clients, things that you're seeing that are common from anxiety to depression or anything like that.
Well, hello, everyone. I am Dr. Keisha Keith, and I am the owner of Interrupt Your Life. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor and a licensed professional counselor supervisor. I see a lot of things, but mainly women in particular, are trying to identify how to come back to themselves, how to get out of the I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm doing 10 things at the same time, but not necessarily giving to myself. And so now I think the focus is a little more on that because of certain things that we will discuss tonight, where we wear too many hats and don't find the rhythm and the balance and saying no. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that is so true as a theme.
Hello, everybody. My name is Latasha Brown, the founder and owner of Brown Clinical Services. And I am a licensed professional counselor supervisor and a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor. And have a practice here in Rock Hill, and we provide services to children up to adults starting at age 6. A lot of things that we're seeing currently in the practice is a lot of anxiety and depression. As it relates to trauma, a lot of DSS cases, children being removed from the home, and that creates a lot of anxiety for the parents. And so just trying to validate, people's feelings and their circumstances and being able to help them through that, phase of life that they're currently experiencing.
Okay, awesome.
My name is Narkia White Bird. I am a licensed clinical therapist. I have a practice called TFC Counseling Solutions. TFC stands for Therapy for Church, because we add a biblical context with a clinical perspective in providing counseling services here in Rock Hill. I'm in a unique place right now that I'm providing a lot of care for veterans, but I would say consistently across the board, whether they be my veteran clients or non-veteran, is that people are looking for identity, in a sense of purpose. And so, yes, we're seeing that depression. Yes, we're seeing that anxiety, but it's in the context of not knowing who they are.
Okay, so identity and purpose, anxiety, depression, all dealing with how people are operating in life, how they're, going throughout their day to day, what it's like for them. And we know we have a lot of financial stressors, and we won't get into government things, but that is also, a stressor as well. So specifically, when we talk about the movie Straw, the Tyler Perry film that's on Netflix, We can see different scenes of Janiyah going through different things psychologically, right? So the first one I'll point out is her, chronic life stressors. She lost her job, financial strain, not being able to handle those things. And so you can kind of see the build up, like from the beginning of the movie, when her boss is continuing to just belittle her, to demasculate her and not allow her to have a voice. You can kind of see how she's starting her trauma there. And so I want us to kind of take some time to unpack that. What does that look like? What scenes did you guys see as therapists that were like, wow, okay, I've seen one of my clients go through that, or just something that you saw as a therapist that was psychological that Janiyah was dealing with?
I would say the first thing I saw was the medical condition of her daughter, that stressor. And as I reflected today on the movie, I was like, she's experiencing a lot of complex trauma. And all of these things, if I'm correct, happened less than 24 hours of the movie starting, from some of the things you identified, the medical condition, seeing the, loss of job, financial issues, getting put out, just a lot of trauma. And so it was a lot.
Definitely.
I do. I agree that, and I feel like that was one of the things that was highlighted, the fact that this was all in one day, right? And so I think that the goal of that, and the goal of the film overall, was to really show the impact of multiple stressors, and so that it occurred in a very short period of time. But in the clinical space, we do see a buildup over a period of time. May not always be that instant that things are happening. But when they do happen, they are exacerbated by other preceding events. So when you have a car issue, it's okay unless you had a house issue and a car issue and a child care issue, and so I think that compiling of all of the things really reflected like the impact of the stress that she was dealing with at that time.
Yeah, for sure. Because in looking at it, the way that she was working two jobs but still not making ends meet, and the frustration of that, to tie into what Latasha was talking about with the health of her daughter, all her focus was on in this entire movie was getting her daughter's medicine so she could get back home to her. That was it. Mm-hmm. And I think that really represents a lot of us. Especially, as mothers, our children might not be so young now, but we can think back to times when we were like trying to be on our grind and do all the things so that we could make sure that they got what they needed. And especially if something out of the ordinary happened, like a health issue, or they broke their arm, or they whatever, then you are shifting. And she was doing that, but on a more significant level, because she felt isolated. She felt alone, and like nobody was there to help her. And everybody was pretty much the enemy at that point because she couldn't get what she needed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And I think about that when it comes to going back, after that situation where the boss is just constantly on her, the scene where she basically shot her boss. Like, he was, and you could hear the ringing in her ears. And I feel like that is a great depiction of trauma, right? Because the ringing in her ears, she just can't take anymore. He's been at her all day. She already don't have the $40 for her daughter. She already don't have the medicine. She's already waking up hot, so all of these things are contributing to her trauma. And so, let's kind of dive into what that looks like, that trauma, as far as, like she just lost it all. Because I feel like, of course, somebody commented and said, there's not that much bad luck in the world. Like, like we talked about, all this happened in one day. And normally it's like maybe it does happen in one day, and maybe it happens over time, or maybe it's a bad week, or whatever. But just that moment when she literally started snapping, and it started with, I feel like that, when she was, the armed robbery where they were trying to steal the money. So let's talk a little bit about that. What did you guys see in that film when she completely snapped?
Well, I would go back a second and just highlight, and Dr. Keisha touched on this a little bit, but highlight that $40 for the lunch money, because that kind of snowballed into all of these other things. I gotta leave work early. They need this money. My daughter's being teased because she doesn't, she doesn't have the money to afford lunch. And so that to be trying so hard to be a provider in something that what we would consider, I think all of us on that call would consider very small, to have to pay the $40 for lunch, was this extremely unreachable goal. And it was like, if I can just get this, then maybe this would take one thing off. This would close one tab. So you have all these computer tabs open and all this processing saying, I got to do this, I got to do that. But if I can close down one tab, it would be, let me just, and that thing that followed her throughout the movie, because even at the bank, it was like, well, can you make sure my daughter get that $40 to eat lunch? So at the beginning of it and at the end of it, it was trying to provide. And how hard is that to do when you don't have community? Now, and I know we'll touch on it probably later. I did see at the end where her mom sort of came in the picture. And so that is something I think that we address as clinicians too, and based on strengths and trying to pull in supports and services. But because she did not either have access to that or know how to access that, then these things snowballed into a much bigger issue.
I love what you said about the tabs, because I believe that is true in our mind. And we're doing this every day, like with constantly being on our phones and not unplugging or being at the computer. I've even had to get some glasses because, blue light, just notes and virtual sessions or whatever, because of always being on the phone. So I feel like that's a good depiction of, just the over processing, overstimulation. That computer is going to shut down, it is. I think Ms. Brown had something.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I think this movie also depicted a mother's love as a theme, a mother's love.
Yeah.
And, we're all women here, and I think maybe have children. Like, we would move mountains for our children. Also, the, where did this start from? This was the last straw. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. But when you go back in a part of what we do as clinicians, like you said, we take a full psychosocial assessment. Where's the support? Where's the family? And when the mother showed up at the end, and also throughout, she was like, it's just me. It's just me. And when she talked about her family, it was like there was no support. So I think when we, bark on life, we start with our origin of family. And what does that family system looks like?
Right.
And to me, she just wanted to be heard. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to be validated. And because she did not have that, I think it added to, her stress as well. She did not have the outlet. Many of us face daily stressors, but what keeps us from not, going into, insanity? It's our outlet, it's our resources, whether that be from faith, whether that be from exercising, just nutrition. They were talking about she didn't have enough food. So how nutrition impacts us. We even know when we get hungry enough, right? Our mood shifts, we become irritated. So it's just so much.
Right. It is a lot to unpack. The last scene that really wowed me Like you said, and I even think about going back to what Ms. Brown said about her mom. There was a reason why she probably didn't call mom, but she was shocked mom was on the phone. You can see the look on her face, but it is about our community and what can we do? Who is in our corner that we could build a relationship with? Maybe she didn't think about mom, but could rebuild that relationship at some point. But the scene that I thought about was her hallucinating her daughter, like, from the time she was, I guess, waking up and taking her to school. And then, the whole hallucination of being, having reality and what's not real. She kind of was going through that as a way to help her, like a state of psychosis where her daughter wasn't even there, so she had all of that intertwined in one, the PTSD, the psychosis, just all of that grief, complicated, trauma. And so I want us to kind of, what else did you all see in that scene? I was really wowed by that at
Can I make
the
a
end.
comment about the psychosis? I have worked with people who have been under extreme stress and it has induced psychosis. So I think that's important for the community to know, people who are watching, that that level of stress can lead you to experience psychosis, being delusional or dissociative, just in or out of body experience, just a lot.
Yeah, because really your mind is wanting to make sense. It's trying to find a rational, logical process. And when you go through a rhythm and a routine every day, you can go through it in your sleep. And a lot of us do, because we are not really tapped in and intentional and fully grounded in the space we're in every day, because we're always there. So we can really miss things and lose sight of stuff. And I think for her, it seemed like that's absolutely what was going on, because like initially you don't know like fully what's happening, because it shows her holding her daughter, walking through the hospital, down the hallway, and waking her daughter up and telling her we got to go. And you actually see a child, in the bed. So it's like, okay, we're rolling through our day. But in actuality, you realize that no, this is not it. So she is going through all of this still, because this is how her days have gone. She has had to fight. It's that all my life I had to fight. That is exactly what she was doing every day. She was fighting, trying to keep it in the middle of the road, but she was driving off the road. And so it is her mind trying to really bring a rationalization to everything that was happening to her. Because even she went to the school, and the look on the principal's face was confusing when you didn't know exactly what was happening. Like, why is she looking at her like that? Like, what's going on? Is something else wrong, with the situation or the child? And so then later you figure out she did all these things, walked through all these processes, and had no child with her. But she is all the while talking to her and telling her we got to go and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
One thing I want to add when you talk about that mental break too is just a lack of rest and a lack of sleep. And I talk about those separately because they're two different things. Rest and sleep are not the same, and you need both. And so when you're constantly either physically working or mentally working, then that also increases that stress level, and can create those dissociative moods where you are in a different space that you're not aware of. So even when you think of people that can't get sleep and they're up for hours, they start to hallucinate. They start to see things that aren't there because their mind, like Dr. Keisha said, it's not connecting. There's a lapse there. And so it is vitally important to get good rest and finding a place where you can rejuvenate. And that's daytime hours, right? And then also getting good sleep, having good sleep hygiene. So you're getting, for an adult, at least, 6 to 8 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about that, it reminds me of Maslow hierarchy of needs. She was at the very bottom, basic food, water, shelter. And we know that we cannot self-actualize, go up that triangle until those basic needs are met.
Yeah, she can't even think about any type of, anything else besides
Anything.
I need to eat, my daughter needs this food, I need food,
We need housing.
housing on her daughter at the time. So in the movie we talked about Community before, but I did see some other actors that were a part of the Community, that brought tears to my eyes, literally. You see Detective Raymond in there, who was very, had built rapport with her, was trying to get her to come out of the bank, and trying to just really talk to her and say, hey, I understand, I know what it's like. But did you guys see anybody else that was a sense of community in the movie?
Actually, the community itself, when one of the persons in the bank went live on Facebook, I think that helped. She probably was going live for a different purpose, just to recount what was happening, but it brought the community in, and we were able to hear her heart and understand her motives, and they were out there cheering for her. So that was a beautiful picture to see, and that's kind of all she wanted, to be heard, to be seen, to be supported. So that was a great, scene there.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part is that is what it took for her to be seen, because she was walking daily life, probably crossing paths with a lot of these people, in the community, and saying hello, and they're going, how you doing? And she's saying fine, and keep it moving. But she finally was able to be seen and be heard once this started to unravel. And then everybody was like, I can relate to that. I know how that feels, because it became you are not on this island that we think we are on all the time. We can think we are such in a bubble here that nobody else is experiencing or has experienced anything near what we are going through at that time, because it just seems that heavy and that hard. And not to diminish her experience, because for sure that is hard, but it is such that she is not alone. She and her sister can lock hand in hand and say, we have not walked in the same path, but we are walking this path. And because of that, being able to connect with each other to find strength, because that part is where we get the refreshing and the renewing that we really need. But it took all of that, and it should never take all of that for any of us to be seen or realize that what we are doing matters, that we are important to somebody besides the people that give us a name or a title or whatever. We have to be important to ourselves. And I don't think she really saw who she was and really saw the value of what it is that she needed to give to herself, because she needed to just stop and be and breathe. But she was too busy running, and running does not, it helps you lose oxygen, does not bring oxygen back to you. She was too busy doing that.
Yeah. Good point.
One thing I wanna add to that when it came to the support, she got a lot of support because she was heard, but she did not give herself a voice. And I think that that's a very important part, is that we have to be our own advocates in a sense, because the other person went live and then she started to explain all of the things that are happening. But there was a part in the grocery store where somebody offered her some money. And so you also have to be in a position of humility in that space, and that can be very hard, especially for women, Black women that are typically very independent. That humility piece is hard. So people don't really know what you're going through if you don't say anything about it. And so, yeah, that opened the door for her to get the support. But we can't say that she would not have been supported had she spoken up about it. And so and that's why I talked about earlier, either she didn't have access or that she didn't know how to access, but who are you asking? And so I think that that's a big part of this too, is to not suffer in silence and suffer alone, because people do get it. People all around you really do get it, and they're willing to help. And sometimes in different seasons of our lives, we have to be on the receiving end of that. And so when we're accustomed being on the giving end, it's hard to really say, I need support now. I need somebody. And sometimes you become guarded and it's hard to trust, maybe she could have had more support with her daughter, but she feels like, well, she has medical issues. I'm the only one that can tend to that. And then you silo yourself. So I think it's very important to also be aware of how we restrict access to community because we don't open up or share some of those concerns or problems or needs.
And I think to your point, it became a escalated issue because she tried to advocate for herself. She did it. She went about it the wrong way towards the end, but she was asking for her check. She was asking for just her check to be cashed. Now, whether or not she really realized that gun was in her hand at first, I don't know, because a lot had transpired in order for her to get from her workplace to the bank. So, but she just wanted what she was deserving in those moments. But absolutely, I don't know that she necessarily would have advocated for herself in other spaces. But I think she became overly frustrated, and especially the humiliation and the psychological abuse that her employer was giving her in every situation. I think those things really snowballed all of the actions she took that became definitely dissociated from herself, but also her trying to fight for herself. But it's another entity of her, part of her, that is fighting for her, and not fully her being present to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute.
And Dr. Keith, I think to your point, also this movie depicted the strong Black woman mantra. And so sometimes when you operate in that mode, you are the default and you don't think outside of yourself, like you say, to ask for the help. And, of course, that can be, we can have a negative impact when we don't think that way. So I noticed that as well. And I think in the movie somewhere she said something like, I have to be strong every day, and that's a lot of times we all kind of face that at times when we don't tap into ourselves. We're not reflective and we don't utilize as a support that that may be around. You tap out.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what she did. She tapped out. And I feel like as clinicians, this is part of our work, right? We help people find their voice before they snap, before they do anything outrageous, before they, dealing with that manager. We're going to automatically suggest you get another job or, file a complaint or whatever. We're going to recommend those things. We can't make anybody do anything, but we definitely recommend those things. So this is scenario one, just hypothetically speaking, Janiyah has just learned that her daughter has died. She goes to the school still, she's still going to the school. And she told you in the session that she's going to the school. And now she's coming to us as a way of like crisis. We fit her in our schedule and all that good stuff. So how would you guys help her in this, in this scenario? What would be the first thing you did?
I mean, for me, it would be, what we call active listening, just allowing her, giving her a safe space to tell her story. Right. And just listening, let her be heard, let her be seen. And then the next step I would probably do is really, at that point, you can't really do counseling. It's more, to me, case coordination of services, helping her with housing, connecting her with resources with housing, maybe someone to help her with the medical bills, just those different basic living necessities.
Yeah. Yeah. And in addition to that, I would say making sure that you are also asking some questions that kind of get her to who is a safe space for her, who is a safe person that she can connect with and actually possibly go to their house tonight. What is our next 24-hour plan? Like this person that you go with, who are you feeling like you are going to be able to trust so that you can do that? Being able to say, maybe it's she needs to get some food, or because she may be hungry. Assessing that too, because I think that becomes very important. Asking her about, if she has thoughts of, harming herself or thoughts of continuation of harming anybody else, to really look at her intent in those situations. Because we've got to make sure that, just like you said, those basic needs have to be met before we do anything else.
And I agree with both of those assessments. Really allowing her to speak, assessing for her needs, connecting her to resources. I would also just if she had learned that her daughter died, and I knew that, I would address that information, because it does give us more clarity on her mental state. And so we are trying to assess her mental state for the current need to see if she's safe for herself. Safe to herself or anybody else. So I would kind of address that too. But I do think that she needed an outlet, a place to kind of talk, a place where she could see that there were options. Because a lot of times when you're between a rock and a hard place, you feel like there are no options. And I tell people there are always options. They might be all bad options, but there's always options.
Yeah, and I think also just stabilizing her, because at that time, if you are taking your daughter who passed away to the hospital, then you are dissociating at that time, So, like you all said, I agree with that, and also say that somewhere that she could go. I know, like in South Carolina, North Carolina, we don't have a lot of resources here, but just somewhere that she could go that could possibly help her. Or like you all said, like a friend or family that she could go stay with for a week or two, just until she can get things figured out, some kind of housing, because of course, we don't want her to become worse in scenarios, whether it be a shelter or become triggered from her mom or someone else. At the same time, like, where could you possibly go? Are you going to be in your car? If you're going to be in your car, can you be in a safe location, doing a safety plan, saying like, what's one reason you want to live? If she don't give you that one reason, I know we as clinicians, we have to make that call to take her to, get her escorted to the hospital there. But
And I was going to say, as it relates to grief and loss of her daughter, I have accompanied a client to a grief group. A lot of times it's scary to walk into a group. And so again, having that support and, if you have that flexibility, to be able to do that or connect her with someone, because a lot of time when you introduce them to something, they see that they're not alone. There are other people in that same situation, and trying to normalize an abnormal situation.
love that. Yeah, and I think about all of that and just being able to point her to the right direction. I know we don't do a lot of crisis work, but we do have some people that come through that, we have to intervene and give that crisis responses to. But let's just say anything else you guys wanted to share, or any other thing you can think about as far as helping Janiyah in that situation before we move on? Okay. So, as far as like scenario two, as we saw in the scene, she was, at the end of the movie, she went to jail. So, say that we were counseling her in jail, and that's some of the work that we did. Where would you start at that point if you were visiting her in jail, and maybe it's a week after the situation has happened, and you go in there, and you have an hour to spend with her, and she may be hysterical. She may have calmed down by that time, but what would you do in that scenario?
So I think in that space, if we've done nothing else and we've not necessarily done the previous scenario, it really is still about safety first, but it is about establishing what clear boundaries need to be, even though she is in jail. What that confidentiality, the limits to confidentiality still stand. Making sure that she understands that if she's saying something that may be about related to safety and her harm, then that is things that I still have to be a mandated reporter about. Just kind of re-emphasizing those things and acknowledging that this is a harsh place to be in right now. And there is still a space where I still see you. I still want to hear and know what it is that you need so that I can be of support here, so that maybe I can connect you, talk to some of those there may be a social worker there in that jail, talk with them to see what resources that we can kind of put in place to be able to work with her in the meantime, in between time, so that there is that bridging of that gap that can happen as we continue. I mean, it's really going to be about a 30-minute session. So it's really brief therapy. And really just in a lot of ways, continuing to establish a rapport with her.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, just assessing for strengths in allowing her to highlight things that she has to look forward to. So really just taking that time, and we do operate from a strengths perspective, but we have to of course assess for safety, but also we want to figure out what's the goal at this point, because we can't come and get you out of jail. Right? So we ask this question sometimes, like if you had a wand and everything and you can get what you need, we can't give you a wand and we can't give you exactly what you want. But let's think about some reasonable goals and things that we can accomplish in this time, because in those sessions while she's there, we can address the grief. The initial session maybe not, but we can address the grief over time. We can continue to assess her mental state. We can give her some strategies to help her cope. She may have never heard some things that would help to kind of get her in a better mental space while she's there. So I would say just kind of assessing for her strengths, figuring out what support she have. Now she's gained supports. We want to acknowledge that the fact that, before you went in here, you may not have had any, but you've gained a number of supports. Is Officer Raymond still available to also lend to that? So now we're building a community. Even though she's in a siloed space, we still have that opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I would start too. I think the first thing is really instilling hope, because she's in jail, it can be like despair. But even though this has happened, I think about the bank manager. She was like, I have to be real with you. You're going to go to jail, but so that reality-based therapy, but what can we do from this point moving forward? And instilling hope so that she doesn't become suicidal in that space, in jail at that time. So, and then, like you say, just identifying the support that she does have now, but hope, motivation, a reason to keep moving forward.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good. And I want to thank everyone for joining in tonight. Thank you for the comments and shares and commenting. Sheena said that, no one really listened to her before, she went off. And so our goal as clinicians, as women of hope, as women, as believers, is to help people to not get to this point, right? To be able to say, like, what else can I possibly do other than snapping, because I do believe that that she didn't have a voice and that she didn't know how to start using her voice. And sometimes, voices are used in the wrong way. And so I just believe that, a lot of our work is helping people to find their voice, helping them find a reason to live, helping them find a reason to keep on going despite, what they could be going through financially with employers, or if they're trying to look for another job while having a job, because a lot of people cannot just stop their job. They have to literally work a job until they can find another one. And so, just supporting, I love what the lady said about having hope and just being there, for others. And I think about that, and I think about, like we talked about, just helping her in those different scenarios. But what can we learn from Jania's story that may relate to some of our clients today? What can we learn, or what would be the takeaways that you guys have from this?
Yeah. One of the things I want to say, I think one of the beauty in counseling is that it provides you that safe space. Most people are busy. Most people got their own issues, but when you come to counseling, that is your time. That's your 50 to 60 minutes, undivided individual time for you to be able to express yourself. And also, I think as a counselor, it reminds me to stay client centered. What is going on with the client? Join the client where they at. No matter what we may want for the client, we have to acknowledge where they at and their motivation to change or to make that next step. And sometimes, we may be given 1, 2, 3 things to do, but I've learned to ask the client, what can you do? What you're willing to do? Because what we may want them to do, they can't do it. They may say, I can just, get out of my bed and sit on the side of the bed. While we may want them to go take a walk or meditate or do these different things. So making sure that we're making the session client centered and we're joining them where they're at.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think helping the client really reclaim their story beyond whatever label they might have, and allowing them to really see themselves, see their value, allowing them to really externalize what trauma is for them, where they're not saying that this is something that happened to me, but this is not who I am. This may have happened to me, but this is not who I am. This does not define me. This is not the end. I can shift here and really identifying what shifting will look like for them, creating a true plan and not saying, okay, I'll try or I'll do, but because goals without plans are wishes. And so we want to not wish life away, but we want to really have actual actionable things that we can do.
I agree. And I think those things are important because we do help to instill that hope and help for them to see that this is temporary, that this is seasonal, and offer some strategies for that moment. If you have a stressful job, some people do, you can't leave your job, you can't afford to leave your job, it's a good paying, maybe you are waiting for something else, or it offers flexibility. Sometimes people have to weigh things out when it comes to their circumstances. Yeah, this place is a little trashy, but it's affordable. Or this job, this manager is a micromanager and they cause me stress, but I get paid more here. So people are having to make decisions throughout that time. And so I think it's okay to be in a space, and it's helpful to be in a space where they can rationalize and think about and make those decisions and have that voice, but also just have some insight and perspective in terms of how can you manage this better, because we can't change any of the other people. And so when we are helping clients to deal with what's going on around them, we have to figure out how can we get you to change or to do something different, or how can you change this, because we can't affect the other people. So I think that's one of the things. It gives perspective, it gives strategies. Hey, can you try this? Hey, what have you thought about this? Oh no, I haven't. Let me try. They could practice, come back. Okay, this is a space to either say, yes, I tried it, I didn't try it, or that didn't work for me. And to be open and candid about that, because we also don't live their lives, and we can offer support, but nobody has to walk those things out but that person. So it is important that they do have the voice, and they are the ones making the decisions, because they're the ones that are going to have to live out those decisions. Doesn't matter whether we think it's a good decision or a bad decision. Whatever you decide, you're the one. You have to be okay with the fact that I'm the one that's going to have to walk this out.
Yeah, that is really good. And like you said, I like the whole trial and error, making sure that they have the tools, and then they try the tools, come back and see what works and what fits. And like Dr. Keisha said, being able to reclaim their story, rewrite it, in a different way. And I did see Sheena in the comments saying that going off was a defense mechanism. And so I think as clinicians, we also teach people healthy ways, because that's also a classic, help me out, y'all, with the word. That's something they say that Black women do, that we just go off, or we have attitudes or things like that. And so making sure
Angry Black woman.
yeah, the angry Black woman, or we're known to do that, but that's not true. That's not true, and we all here as grounded women of faith can attest to that, and so teaching people healthy ways to use their voice instead of always rah, 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 you're able to calmly tell someone and correct someone and be able to say it assertively in a healthy way, to where you're not going out of character and the person is not calling the police on you, and so I just, thought about that. And then, a lot of people are saying this is a great discussion, and Lamont said, mental health is important. We have to talk about our mental health. And so I'm glad that we could come on here tonight and talk about our mental health, the things that we just see this movie, we just see trauma, but what's next? What happens next after this? What do we do next? And so I think about like practical, everyday things, so that we don't get to the Janiyah story, so that we don't get to crisis. Yeah, maybe your life is not that bad. Maybe you just have one of those things going wrong. Maybe you just have, I saw someone in the comments talk about being a single mom, and she can understand what Janiyah was going through. Maybe you have a few of those Janiyah, problems or challenges. And so my thing is with that, like, what can we do every single day to where we're building a plan, like we're creating the life that we want? I always tell people, like, Ms. White said, we can't wave a magic wand, but what would that look like? Let's close your eyes. Let's think about what your dream life would look like. And I feel like that helps people paint the picture of what they want to aspire to be. And it doesn't have to be this astronomical thing. It could start simple. It could start with, in the morning, I want to get up at 7 so I can breathe before my kids get up. Like, what are we going to do every single day so that we don't get to the Janiyah story, so that we're not having to work 2 jobs and things like that? So I feel like it's like daily restorative practices, things that we're doing to help ourselves. So what would you all say on how do we not get to the Janiyah story?
So I think I would start with first the kind of like the reminder of, you don't have to break to be heard. That your struggle is valid even before the breakdown. You have to remember that part. But in order to remember that, you got to pause. You got to be still, because moving is not getting it, and it's not helping you to reset. And so being able to pause and really sit and ask yourself questions. You can answer yourself out loud. I do it all the time. So, but asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? And then, naming that. Is that sadness? Is it frustration? Is it numbness? Is it I'm just tired? I mean, it could be any number of those. And also respond to that after you name it. So what do I need in this moment? Do I need that rest that Narkia was talking about? Do I need support? Do I need some more of this stillness? Because I don't know what this is, and this feels uncomfortable right now. Lean into it. Lean into the uncomfortable until you get that breakthrough and that shift that you need. And also prayer. it is okay to ask others to pray for you. It is okay to pray for yourself. Talk to God, talk to him like you talking to me, and tell him exactly what it is that you need. Tell him how you are feeling. He already know that, but you need to acknowledge it, because you can't heal anything that you won't reveal. And if you keep saying I'm fine, well, you're going to be fine all the days of your life, and it's going to be a horrible experience for you. Fine will become the most horrible thing in the world if you cannot allow yourself to just be and just breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely agree with everything you've stated, Dr. Keith. Like you stated too, Candace, self-care is daily care. It's not an event, oh, I'm going to go get my hair or my nails done, or I'm going to go to this concert. We have to wake up like we brush our teeth daily, identify daily care. And it could be, I tell people small, I say by the time you need a vacation, it's past overdue if you need a vacation. So, getting up, like you say, 5 minutes early to, meditate or to do some affirmations or go exercise. We have to find those moments just to break away from our routine and pour back into ourselves. I know we hear the slogan, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's just true. It's just true. So, helping her to identify small ways. There are things that don't even cost money. I call it green therapy, sun therapy. Get outside. The beauty of nature is healing within itself. Being able to take a walk or even take a walk with your child. Just finding ways to make it work in your situation. So that's why I think, again, it's very important to be client-centered, because again, I may give 3 or 4 different recommendations and she can't do either of those. What can you do right now? What have you done that has been positive, even though she may not be doing it now, but getting her to think, because one thing, you want people to be able to function without you as a counselor. So our job is to empower our clients. So when something happened, that they can apply those skills that they're learning in a variety of scenarios. Because once you have the skill, you can apply it no matter what happens. You're ready for it.
Those are really great suggestions. And Dr. Keith said something when she said, what do you need in this moment? And I think that's a question that a lot of people cannot answer. So they might feel flustered or frustrated or annoyed or angry or whatever the feeling is. When you ask, what is it that you need? Some people cannot fully answer that question. So I do think that that's really good to think about. And also just remembering, hey, how have you gotten through? We've all gone through some level of transition or change or conflict or challenge at some point. How have you gotten through this? What has helped you before to get through this? How have you gotten through this in the past? And then also reminding people of just their resources and when to tap into those. Have you heard about the Tribe of Judah grief group? Oh no, I never heard of that. Where is that? And so now you have another option, and you're opening and unfolding and revealing that, hey, the options are more expansive than what I think they are. So I do think that it does help to give people perspective by thinking about the fact that, hey, I've done, maybe not been in this situation, but I've been in some situation. I faced some challenge, and there were certain things that have helped in the past that you want to bring into the now. And then, of course, like Dr. Keith mentioned as well, just prayer, really spending time in prayer. I encourage community, even if that's one person. Community doesn't have to be a big group, but if you have somebody that you can just sort of vent to, or somebody to help to bear that burden, that's going to be important too.
That's really good. Prayer and just finding those moments. So I think about prayer and I think about how, so I've heard sometimes people just say different things about prayer, right? And I say that prayer is talking to God, but meditation is listening to God. And so I feel like we don't take the time to sit and be still because we have the phone, because we have the TV, because we have this and that. But it's just like if we really sat down, we would know what we needed, right? We would know what to do next. And so I feel like we are in sometimes a rat race in this world to just keep on going and doing this thing. And oh, I got to do this because this person is doing the next thing. No, like sit with yourself. It's okay, as these ladies are saying, it's okay to sit with yourself. And then Miss Renee Bryant was talking about they have support at school for single parents. They have food that they're starting to offer. And so I just want to bring up some more resources that you guys can think of. I think we shared some before the live of places where people can really go where they may need some help. They may be in a denied situation and they need resources to get them to the next step. Just literally, they're trying to breathe, they're trying to eat, they're trying to get from point A to point B. They're not trying to go get a facial, they just want their next meal. And so let's take some time to just share those resources if you guys have them. We did say the Tribe of Judah. I think Ms. Brown, you were talking about a grief group as well.
Yes, that's at First Baptist. They have a grief group. They have a lot of community resources. Before we came live, I was sharing with the counselors about the mobile crisis number that they have at Catawba Mental Health, and I do want to state that out loud. Anybody can use this number. It's 1-833-364-2274. And again, it's mobile crisis. So if you feel like you're at that last straw, they are the people, to also call. Because again, we have to, take in consideration what level of care. And most of us are in an outpatient office setting. And so, after 5, 7, or 8, you do need crisis support.
And that's true. And even to your point, because I wanted to say, but I didn't say it at the time because I was thinking about Catawba Mental Health. They also have a counselor that goes into the jail who will provide some mental health services. So if by chance you do have a loved one who is in jail in the York County area, they are able to provide that service. There is also something kind of similar that's going on in Chester in their jail as well. So those are two that I'm kind of aware of in the legal aspect of things. If that is a place where your loved one finds themselves or where you find yourself, there are still supports there.
Okay. And then, there's, of course, all these shelters, Safe Passage, Hope of Rock Hill, Pilgrims Inn. And so if there is someone out there listening, or you may know of someone that needs help, if you want to inbox me, because I know about privacy and confidentiality, if you want to inbox me, we're putting together a resource list of different things that would be helpful to someone in need, or if you're in need. So just inbox me your email. That way you don't have to let everyone know your business, but just inbox me your email so that we can make sure that you have those resources that we mentioned tonight.
And I just want to quickly share just a process for searching for help, because I know that sometimes it's hard for people to figure out where to start with that. And we're in the Rock Hill area, so we're giving a set of resources for this particular area. But I see some people on the live that are in other areas that are not local to here. So I would say Google is your friend. Start with a Google search to just search for what you need and start to look locally first. So you will see some national helplines or numbers. So when you look at a certain place, make sure that it has an address and a location that is near where you are, and start there first. Some of the national options take a little bit longer to get help, unless it's like a crisis line. Then you can get immediate help. And that's also an opportunity. There's a national text or a crisis line that you can call and have somebody to talk to. So even if it's after hours and you just kind of want to vent, you want some solutions, that line also does help with finding resources in your local area as well. So they assist with that. But I would say start there, make phone calls, kind of, block out a few minutes to call and ask agencies what they offer and what information you need. A lot of times you do need documentation to say, to support that this, you are who you are. So you'll need identification, but some things you don't. If it's a food pantry, most of the time you don't need anything. It's just really figuring out where those are located in your community. So I do encourage that, to just kind of build your list of resources. If you're looking for counseling and you feel like, well, I don't know where to start in that regard, or affordability, then you typically just take your insurance and look on the back. It'll have either a website or phone number where you could get a list of the providers that take your insurance. If you are doing a self-pay option, there are, I know OpenPath is one, but there are some companies that offer like a sliding scale or a smaller fee. There are places that offer, some people think that nobody takes Medicaid for counseling, but that is not true. So there are places that also take Medicaid. So do not rule any of the options out. So you might have to call around a little bit and do that work. But I just encourage you to do that, because it is, in the long run, you're building up your level of support, and you're building up that capacity. And that's important, because you want to be fortified so that when you get in a season where something happens, then you're able to respond appropriately. And so I think that prevention piece is really important, to build the tools, build the skills, so that Latasha said earlier, Ms. Brown said earlier, you're not leaning and depending on that therapist for that level of support. We want you to be able to kind of manage those things, but just given skills. So if you go to, a heart doctor, they're going to talk about preventative health. They're going to make sure you're eating healthy, so in the meantime, you want to make sure you're resting, that you're good and get sleep, that you're good getting exercise, that you're getting exposure to sunlight. All of those things are preventative things that you can do to properly manage and maintain your mental health.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to add to that is EAP benefits, Employee Assistance Program benefits. If you're working, you want to maybe explore with your HR person, do you have those benefits where the company will pay for counseling services on your behalf? So that's important, because I still talk to people and they are not aware of that. And a lot of time the companies do offer that.
Yeah. And also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say one other thing. And then in counseling, we say, building our toolbox. So what Ms. White is saying, like all these different things she has identified, is building your toolbox as a client, because that's what we do as counselors, in order to better help our clients. We build our toolbox over the years of different resources, different interventions to help support our clients.
Absolutely. And I was going to say psychologytoday.com. That's a resource that you can use wherever you live.
Yes.
You just put in your zip code and it will pull up those therapists who are in your area. You can even filter your insurance that you have and what you're having, like whatever your presenting problem might be. And you can find those particular people that will pop up who are on that particular list. There's the Loveland Foundation. So they provide therapy support for Black women and girls. And I think I did put that one in the chat. And there's also therapy for Black girls. There's Black mental wellness. So, I mean, you can find a plethora of different resources. 988 instead of 911 when you are in crisis. Those tools in your toolbox, because you don't know when midnight will hit, but you want to be prepared for midnight.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. And I love what you got, the resources you all shared. And thank you, Jaleesa, for putting those together. So something I think about is like, don't let the straw break. Don't wait until I hear that all the time. And I have to break that down to people that You don't have to be in a crisis to go get counseling. You don't have to lose someone to go get counseling. Get counseling for you because you want to be a better person, because you want to be a better version of yourself. Go to therapy for that. I have a therapist. I'm sure, you ladies, talk to someone, mentor, therapist, because we all are evolving every single day. Don't let the straw break before you go get therapy. Let's build up our toolbox. Let's take care of ourselves. Let's better ourselves and use these resources to help us. And so as we come to a close, I just want to really allow you ladies to, express any final thoughts on the discussion we've had tonight.
So I'll say, as you know, thank you definitely for this opportunity. Anytime that I can talk mental health, and especially with an esteemed panel such as this, I love it, because the more that we can have the conversation, the more that hopefully we can bridge the gap, but we can also reduce the stigma continually, because a lot of people still don't want to go and talk to somebody about their business. And so, but there are safe spaces for you to go, and that is one that will be non-judgmental. And if you just want to sit there and cry, then do that. That's your space to do it. It gives you the opportunity to feel what you need to feel. And so never discount that. If something feels off, something doesn't feel right, call somebody, because that, it might be you preventing that straw from breaking the camel's back.
Yes. I echo with what Dr. Keith has stated. Thank you again for this opportunity and providing this platform. And like you say, continue to reduce the stigma regarding mental health and normalizing it. Like you said, we may go get checks for everything else. And Dr. Keith, what you used to say, something from the
Get
neck
a
up.
checkup from the neck up. That's
Yes,
it.
yes. And the mind is a powerful thing. And once that, as we can see in this movie, once that leaves us, everything else falls apart. So, make sure that we're checking on our mental health, checking on our strong friends, and just asking for help when you need it.
Yes, and I was excited to be a part of this conversation as well. And yeah, I encourage the same thing, continue to just do the work every day. Continue to consider yourself. And I think one thing that we can tend to do sometimes is consider others. And we want to do that, but we consider others more than we do ourselves. So we should prioritize ourselves too, so we can make sure that we're being refilled and being refueled, and that we're accessing those things that we need on a regular basis.
Awesome, awesome. And one more thing, ladies, before we go, I want to first shout out my partner, Higher Definition Radio. Thank you for everything you guys are doing and pushing and us doing things together. That's what community is about. And so I want to thank them. I want to thank everyone who joined, who commented, who shared. Share this with someone that may be going through, that may need some help. And also, I just want to say, I want us to shout out our businesses. I'm the owner of New Vision Therapy and Wellness. I went fully live this January full time with my business. So it's been a great journey. And so I do take Medicaid. If someone on here, I'm not seeing clients, but I have a clinician that is seeing clients. So if you need therapy, I'll post my website. You can also inbox me. But I'm excited to just be in this space to do the work to help people really, not just talk about it, but to really be about it. And so I'm glad that we all are on here and we are believers. We believe in God and we know that we're doing the work every day by helping someone to choose to live. And so I'll let you all just talk about your businesses and the services you offer.
All right. So then I am Interrupt Your Life, and that is INNERRUPT, not inter, but inner, because it's the inner work that we must do on ourselves so that we can show up and be present. And for me, I do a lot more groups right now, and workshops and retreats. And so I do also have an event coming up in Spartanburg. It will be June the 20th through the 21st. And so there are still tickets available for that. So I will put that information in the chat as well. And I primarily work with women who are tired of giving to everything but not giving anything to themselves.
Awesome. My company name is Brown Clinical Services, and we work with children from the ages 6 up to adults. I have a team of professional counselors that work with me, and so we take commercial as well as Medicaid, and our contact number is 803-328-1625, and we would love to help.
And I am an individual provider, Narkia White. You'll see Bird many places, but of TFC Counseling Solutions. I offer virtual services right now for adults and couples. And so I put my information in the chat as well, so you can look me up. I am not accepting new clients right now, I will say, but I will be very soon in July, likely. So if you would like to call, just schedule a conversation, then we can have that to kind of figure out what your needs are. I do accept insurances, Cigna, Aetna, Optum, United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and a number of other ones. So there's an option to check your insurance there if that's something that you are interested in.
Awesome. Well, this will conclude our discussion. We helped Janiyah, I feel like, tonight. And so I'm excited to continue doing work with you ladies, to continue not to burn ourselves out, but to just continue to do the work together. And I thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules, out of your night, to come on here and go live and offer resources, support, empowerment, and just wisdom tonight. So God bless you all. And we're signing off, and we'll see you guys next time. All right. Bye.